One of the problems with this Danshan region is that, unlike the heart and the head, which are both contained, so this is inside this thoracic dish, and this point is inside the cranium. This is opposite the lumbar spine, which tends to push it forwards. So getting your bum in is just an attempt to create a container in the lumbar spine, which draws the Danshan back towards the Ming Men. Do the breathing exercise. Don't worry too much about the breathing. Just draw the Danshan in towards the Ming Men and then let it out again. What I'm trying to do is get the part of my spine from the Ming Men down, blending into the legs so that my legs are just part of this S-shaped spine, but S from the feet rather than from here. Pull my belly in. I really want to pull myself down into the legs. I want the feeling that from my Ming Men down, it's just reaching down towards my knees. I don't want my legs to be a barrier between me and the ground. My legs are drawing me down towards the ground and down into the ground. So here I'm being sucked down as I almost bend double. And then I can rear up a bit here just to relieve the legs a bit. and then settling. So it feels that from the Ming Men up the spine is just a gentle curve like this. So it's the beginning of the loop of a figure of eight that comes over and enters at the Dan Shen. And then what's beneath the Ming Men is a curve like this, all the way down to the ground. So my Ming Men is the point of inflection of the S, where the two halves of the S join up. So when you get it and the Dan Shen feels as though it's contained rather than it jutting out and pushing out because I'm pointing my bum back, I've drawn in my belly, I've flattened out my lumbar spine, and the Dan Shen is drawn in. Then it's just that much more settled. And it feels as though these two centers are just part of the same thing. So the Dan Shen is like the bottom of the heart, and the thymus and the throat are like the top of the heart. But this whole, the cavity of your torso is your heart. Now let's try. Just a simple Qigong. Feel this point here where your lower and upper body are sort of symmetrical. So you pass through that point. And then the earth one, so going down. Like you're scooping up a handful of dirt and packing it into the belly. And then combining the two. Good. And then so the same exercise, but on the turn now, turning to my left and opening up to that left side, and then drawing it in. I'd like to feel this coming from the action of the legs. So my arms are opening up to the side, but the reason they're opening up is because they're just mirroring the legs. My legs are both pushing and straightening, and I don't want that to bring me up, so I allow it to turn me. And that is mirrored by what the arms are doing. And then both legs are bending, so both arms are bending. And then when I go past the front, both legs are straightening again. We tend to concentrate on the arms because that's where the feeling is, but I want to really be conscious of the action of my legs. It is all coming from the legs. I want to be conscious of the forces. So the straightening of the legs, straightening against this hard ground that's forcing this turn. So force in a good way, not a bad way. So my legs are pushing, and that's making me turn. I also want to feel the energetic aspect. So this sense that as I turn, as the forces are in play, something in me just lets go and allows energy to gush out of me, especially the back leg. I have a sense that something is coming into the ground here, rather than me simply pushing against the ground to make this turn. Forcefully, I'm just straightening the leg and pushing this hip round. But in another sense, I'm letting go so that something can flow down this leg. And if anything, that is holding the hip back. So there's always a play between the forces which are making the movements and structurally stabilizing the body, and the energy that wants to come into play if we just relax a little bit and get the spirit to come up a bit. So I'm pushing myself around, but I'm also sinking. I'm still sinking. Sinking is not just a physical getting lower. It's a real sense that the ground just becomes a sink. It's like water draining down the plug hole. Each of my feet is like a plug hole, and energy will just drain down me if I let it. You remember that phrase from the Tao Te Ching, soft like ice about to melt. So I have a degree of structural integrity, but it's always threatening to melt. Bring it back. Bring the mind back to here. Feel the sacrum and the tail pointing towards the knees. And now let's just look at the mechanics of turning a bit more. So straightening my right leg to force a turn to the left corner. And then bending that right leg to pull me back to the front. And then straightening the left leg to push me round to the right corner. And then bending it. This is the basic action of the human being, reaching out in order to bring something in. It's what I'm doing with my hands all the time through the day. And when I'm walking, it's what I'm doing with my feet as well. So one of my legs reaches out and pulls the ground that it hits towards me. And of course, because the ground doesn't move, I move towards it. But it's exactly the same action as my hands reaching out to pull an object in. I just want to be aware of the force and the energy. So I'm pushing the ground to push this hip round, but also I'm melting down the leg. And then exactly the same thing, but just reach forwards with it, like you're pulling in a rope. As the hand goes out, my elbow drops to twist the arm. As my hand comes in, it twists the other way. As the elbow drops, I get the attacking spiral. As my elbow comes up, as I retrieve the hand, that's the yielding spiral. So let's bring it back to here again. From the ground, I'm just this smooth S all the way up. So that forceful and energetic aspect, we want to feel here as well when we're still. So obviously there's a force, otherwise I'd be falling down. So I'm pushing the ground in order to hold myself up. But in another sense, I'm sort of melting and oozing down that structure into the ground. Imagine you sort of stood like this all day. By the end of the day, you'd just be a pool on the floor because you would have completely melted. That's the sense. And then the mind can just get down here because this, in a sense, it's where it wants to be. So when the mind is in the Dan Chen, it feels very much like your eyes are here and you're looking at the world from here. So there's always a sense that you're looking up a little bit. So trust the gut. It's got a lot to do with that, just being able to trust your feelings rather than having to worry about everything. And now let's turn again, but now allowing the straightening leg to become a front leg. So I straighten my left leg, I'm sorry, my right leg, and that turns me this way. So like repulse monkey, the straightening of this leg is turning me, but it's also driving me into my supporting leg. And then I pull with the leg, and that draws me back to the front. And then I push with this leg. So I'm pushing with the left leg, but now it's turning me to the left rather than the right. And then I pull, and then I push. It's the same spirals. This is the attacking spiral. This is the yielding spiral. As my leg straightens, the arm straightens and twists into the attack. And just feel the energy coming out, even though my body is moving back. So it's very much repulse monkey. In repulse monkey, you really sink backwards and lean forwards so that your energy is released forwards rather than going back with your body. and then back. Again, I just want this feeling that my spine is reaching through my legs. And now let's put those two together, and we get effectively bow and arrow posture. Straighten the left leg and turn yourself to the left. So now I'm pushing myself back into the back foot, and then bend that leg to pull yourself back to the front. But now straighten the right leg and again turn yourself to the left. So that now my right leg is a back leg, and then bend it to bring you back to the front, and then straighten the left leg back to the front, straighten the right leg. It's basically bow and arrow posture towards this corner. Back foot and front foot. Okay, let's try it in bow and arrow posture, then it'll just be a bit clearer. So 1 foot forwards. Okay, so just feel this. Bow and arrow posture is basically 1 foot forwards with the hips square, the hips facing towards the front foot. Riding horse is with the hips facing the corner, so my feet are parallel, sort of. So what we're going to do is just move backwards and forwards, and we're going to just oscillate really between this, which we will be in. So we'll be in bow and arrow when we are in the front foot and when we're in the back foot. But as we pass through the middle, the hips will tend to turn into riding horse. So let's try it. Just start off in riding horse, so with your hips sort of here. This is where they want to be, because this is like a sort of low energy position where both sides of the body are effectively the same. Now just straighten your right leg, so your back leg, and push your right hip round. So now you're facing the front, and the weight is as much in the front foot as it's ever going to be. And then you just bend the back leg, and that pulls you back to the corner. So here, and then you straighten the front leg and bring yourself back into bow and arrow. So now I'm in bow and arrow posture with my weight in the back foot. And then I bend the front leg, and that brings me to the corner. And then I straighten the back leg, and that brings me into the front foot. And then I bend and straighten. So I'm simply moving backwards and forwards, but really looking at it in terms of the action of the legs. See, what we don't want to do is, we don't want the way that we are in the world to come from ideas. So normally when we do something, we have an idea of what it is we're going to do, and we obey that idea. So if I'm in bow and arrow and I'm thinking of doing that warm-up exercise, so we just move backwards and forwards, then I'm keeping a stiffness here, and then I'm just pushing myself like this backwards and forwards. So that's very much an imposition of one thing. I want to feel the intricate mechanics of the body, which is always two at least. So I straighten the back leg, and that brings me forwards and turns me to the front. And then I bend the back leg, and that starts turning me around to the corner. But then I straighten the front leg, and that again brings me back to the front. And then I bend the front leg, straighten the back leg. So as I'm moving backwards and forwards, there's this sort of shimmery quality because my hips and my waist are always turning, although tiny bit. And we just want to feel just how difficult it is to actually get the hips round square. And if you've got a long stance, then if you want to get yourself square when you're in the back foot, you basically have to lean forwards, which is fine. And then here, I really have to straighten the back leg to get this hip round. So this is what you see when people are sort of doing that warm-up exercise of just going backwards and forwards. Their shoulders are facing forwards, but their hips are over here because they're not really looking at what they're doing. They're just following an idea. So here I really want to push this round, and then I just let it pull back as I bend the leg. But now I push this back and then pulling. So when we do something, especially an exercise that is relatively simple, we endeavor to, what happens is we concentrate in a way that negates the feeling and the emotion. And it's the feeling and the emotion that we want to expose. So when I really straighten this leg, how fierce does it make me feel? And then when I bend the leg, I'm sort of hiding inside something, but then I straighten this leg, and again, I'm fierce, but in a repulsed monkey way because I'm driving back. And then again, I conceal it. And now something is coming out of the heart. And then I suck it back in, and then something comes out of the heart again. So when we start practicing, it has to become from an idea, if you like, or an instruction. But we want to just do it long enough so that we start feeling what's happening and feeling the range within the movement. So something that appeared quite boring and flat ends up being really rich because it's just so full of feeling. Let's just bring it back. And now the other foot forwards. And now let's do the full and empty. So it ends up being the same thing, but we're just thinking a bit differently. So as I come forwards, I'm filling. So to think of energy as a bit like water. So when a vessel fills with water, it generally, the water comes in from the top of the vessel, but it actually fills from the bottom. So this is what we want to feel. As I bring my weight forward, something is coming up the leg. And just keep this back leg pushing so that the energy that comes up, the filling, you get a sense that your whole body is just filling with this water until it comes out of this hand. And then I drop this hand, and now I bend the back leg, and that starts the energy. That's like the suck on the siphon. That starts the energy coming up. And then I use my front leg to drive myself back to force this rising to come up into my front hand. But again, if I don't get the hips square, then my energy won't come out in this direction. So remember, what directs your energy is the direction of the front foot, but also your hips. So when I go back, I end up facing this way. That's where my energy will go. So to get my energy to come out forwards, I really have to straighten the front leg. And then I can bring the energy up here and as you pass through the middle, you tend to turn towards the corner. And then as you drive into the leg, either front or back, you turn back to the front. and then back. I want to get down. Now let's try the figure of 8 around the hips. But rather than tracing a path with a point on my body, even if it's just conceptually, I want to feel it as the flow of intention, the flow of energy. So it becomes very similar to this exercise we did earlier of just opening up to the side. So I want to keep my spine in the middle. So I'm not really going to move my spine leg to leg too much. The figure of 8 really needs to be my intention. I intend it. I don't think it. I don't see a shape in my mind. I allow myself to just push it with my fierceness. So I turn this way and something extends out of me. And then when I turn back, that draws it back in to my belly. And then when I turn here, the straightening of my legs makes me become a bit fierce. And then I can squeeze my mind out, and then bending the legs sucks it back in to the down chin. Think of it like a boomerang. If you think of a boomerang, you throw it in the right way and then it will return. But imagine that boomerang was obeying your intention. So you threw it and you had to intend it going out, and then you had to intend it coming back to you. Same thing here. I have to intend that loop of the figure of 8. So it's the same exercise we did earlier physically. It's just I'm using my mind a bit differently. My mind, if anything, is getting more fierce. So I have to keep the intention together. I don't want to just explode like this. So I have to keep something together, but then I have to burn it along this path using my intensity. And then it won't just return because I want it to. I have to really make it. So here, this is really determined, drawing in. And then this is just as determined, but squeezing out. And then I pull it back in. Now let's try just similar figure of 8 exercise. Again, I want it to be my intention that's sending this stream of energy that's dragging my hands and arms along with it. Feel the difference between the quality of the intention that brings the hand up and the quality that brings the other hand down. Part of me is reaching for the heavens and part of me is reaching for the earth, and they're both very different. So as a Taoist, I need to be able to contain these two moods all the time. Effectively, the mood of yielding and the mood of attacking. And they're shifting all the time. One's turning into the other one. But at any one moment, I have a balance. So at the same time that I'm reaching out, the other half of me is digging down into the earth, down the leg. So I never get too carried away because there's always this balance. Okay. We're always struggling to strike a better balance. What that generally means is more sinking, because we'll always tend to privilege the exciting bit, the bit that brings us into the head and out of the legs. Okay, let's bring it up. And now this. It's the same here. So we will tend to have our mind with the heel that's coming up, because that feels like that's where the activity is. But we want it equally to be with the heel as it goes down, because that's the rooting aspect. So it's the heel going down really that's more important, because as this heel goes down, it gets underneath the ground and enables this foot to come up. So the sense that my heel, my descending heel, is uprooting the other foot as it goes down, as it hits the ground. As this heel goes down, it enables this one just to come off the ground like it wants to. I don't have to do anything special. I don't have to pluck at the foot. So my foot has to be strong enough, not simply to be able to lift the heel, but also to be able to really control its descent so it doesn't just bang down. So if it does that, there's no real energy in it. So I want it to really go down slowly, and then the energy will continue and seep under. Okay. So it's all groundwork in the sense that we're working from the ground into the ground. It's all sinking. And so it's difficult. It's grim. And it hurts. And so it's not for everyone. Something in you just has to feel its importance. It's quite interesting. I've been looking at these sort of American enlightened masters, the ones that sort of came into their own in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. I really think enlightenment, unless you're just an anomaly, an outlier, then enlightenment is something that maybe may come right at the end. And it requires so much groundwork to just make you more mature, really. So what you're not hankering for is enlightenment experience. You're not hankering for the end of suffering and for bliss. Because I suspect enlightenment, when it really happens, it's damn difficult. Because it just means that you're just open really all the time. You're just operating from your whole being rather than from your head. So it's someone like Adyashanti. He's a beautiful man. He's younger than me. Got enlightened over 20 years ago now. And now he's had to retire and stop teaching because he's suffering from PTSD. So there's something about these really strong experiences that are traumatic unless you have the real guts to not let them traumatize you. And that just takes a lot and a lot of work. And the chances are you'll never get there, but Castaneda said, your big breakthrough really comes when you realize it's all going to fail, but you decide to continue with this, what he called the impeccable path or the path with heart, because it's the only thing that's true to you, even though it's damn difficult. It'd be much easier to turn on the TV and have a beer. Okay, great.